the empty stomach and the silent cry. The wind blew softly across the ruined market. Dust danced in the air like faded memories. Jack, a human explorer, walked slowly, his boots crunching broken glass and dry leaves. He was far from any town, just searching for scrap or supplies. The place had once been full of life, but now, only silence. He moved past broken stalls and smashed crates. A rusted sign above one of them read in alien symbols, "Fresh roots and fruits." But there was nothing fresh here anymore. Jack stopped when he heard something. It was soft, a sound like a whimper, like someone crying, but not loudly, not shouting, just weak, lost. He turned his head, eyes narrowing. The sound came from behind a pile of fallen boards and broken metal. Carefully, he stepped closer. "Hello?" he called out, voice calm. "Is someone there?" No answer. He stepped around the wreckage and froze. There, in the shade of a cracked wall, sat a figure, an alien woman. Her skin was pale purple, covered in dust. Her clothes were torn and thin. Her arms wrapped around a small bundle, a baby. The baby was barely moving. Its tiny fingers gripped nothing. Its mouth opened to cry, but no sound came out. The woman stared at Jack. Her eyes were wide, but there was no anger, no fear, only sadness. Her lips trembled. She looked too tired to run, too weak to speak. Jack knelt down slowly. He pulled his bag off his shoulder and unzipped it. From inside, he took out a silver meal pack, one of his last. He opened it and held it toward her. She didn't move. The baby made a faint sound again, more like a breath than a cry. Jack moved, closer, and gently placed the food pack on the ground between them. "Take it," he said softly. Still, the woman didn't reach for it. She looked at the baby, then at him. Tears filled her eyes. Jack slowly picked up a spoon and scooped out a bit of the warm mash. He held it near the baby. The woman flinched, but then she nodded. Just once. With great care, Jack touched the food to the baby's lips. The baby licked it, swallowed, then reached out, weak but wanting more. Jack fed the baby another spoonful, and then it happened. The mother's body shook. Her hand rose to her mouth. Her shoulders bent forward. She cried in silence. No sound, just shaking sobs. Tears poured down her dusty face. She leaned her head down over her child and wept. Jack didn't say anything. He just kept feeding the baby until it had enough strength to whimper again. He placed the rest of the food in the woman's hand. Her fingers trembled. She looked at the food like it was gold. She took a bite, then another. She chewed slowly, as if unsure if it was real. When she finished, she looked at Jack again. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was soft and broken. Jack gave a small smile. "You're welcome." He looked around. The sky was starting to turn orange. Night was coming. "You can't stay here," he said gently. She said nothing. She just looked down, clutching her baby tightly. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She nodded slowly, then pointed to her chest and whispered, "Vila, and your baby?" She looked at the child with love. "Tavi." Jack stood and offered his hand. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe." She stared at the hand for a long second, then slowly she took it. Her grip was weak, her fingers cold. As he helped her to her feet, the baby stirred and gave a soft sound. Not quite a cry, more like a breath of life. Together, the three of them walked out of the ruins, away from the broken market, toward something unknown, toward hope. The story in her eyes. Jack walked beside the alien woman, Vila, as the sun dipped below the ruined horizon. The orange light touched her face, and for the first time, he saw her clearly. Her cheeks were hollow. Her steps were slow. She carried her baby close, wrapped in a torn cloth. eyes always scanning the shadows. They reached a small shelter Jack had built weeks ago, just a metal frame and a solar blanket for cover. Not much, but better than sleeping in the open. Vila sat quietly, holding her baby, Tavi. The child slept now, fed and calm. But Jack could see worry in her eyes. He handed her a flask of clean water. She nodded in thanks and drank slowly. Her hands shook with every sip. Jack sat across from her. A soft breeze passed between them. He wanted to ask questions but didn't want to scare her. Still, something in her eyes pulled him in. Deep sadness, heavy pain. She hadn't said much, but her silence said everything. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a small flashlight. He turned it on and placed it on the ground between them. Soft white light lit the space. Vila reached into her torn satchel and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She opened it slowly. A photo. Old. Worn. Torn on the edges. Jack leaned closer. In the picture there was Vila smiling. Beside her stood a tall alien male, strong and proud. He held her gently. Between them a baby much smaller than Tavi now. Happy, healthy. Jack looked up at her. Your husband? She nodded once. Her lips trembled. She pointed to the stars, then made a crashing motion with her hand. Her other hand clenched into a fist. Ship? Jack asked quietly. She nodded again, then closed her eyes and whispered, Gone. Jack understood. Her husband was gone, maybe lost in battle, maybe his ship crashed. She was alone now. With a baby, no home, no food. He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Vila stared at the photo, then touched it to her forehead. A quiet goodbye. Then she placed it gently back in her bag. I'm sorry, Jack said. Vila looked up at him. Her eyes were full of tears again, but this time she smiled. It was weak, but it was real. You help, she whispered. No one helped before. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. That's what people should do. She tilted her head. People? She asked. Humans, he corrected with a chuckle. At least the good ones. A faint sound came from the darkness outside the shelter. Jack turned sharply. His hand reached for his weapon. Vila grabbed her child and held him close. Silence. Then again, a soft crunch. Footsteps. Jack rose slowly, eyes scanning the night. He turned off the flashlight. He motioned for Vila to stay low. Something, or someone, was out there. Jack moved to the edge of the shelter, crouching low. He drew his small plasma sidearm. Another crunch. Then, whispers. Low. Raspy. Not human. He could barely make out the words, but they sounded harsh. Then laughter. Jack's heart beat. Faster. He peeked from behind the metal sheet. 3 figures moved in the shadows, tall, armed. Not soldiers, scavengers. Their armor was mismatched, faces half covered. One of them carried a net. They weren't here to talk. They were hunters, and they had found prey. Jack slipped back inside. Vila, he whispered. We have to move, now. She nodded quickly, wrapped her baby tighter. Her fear was clear, but she didn't panic. Jack packed his things fast, grabbed the flashlight, the food pack, the water. He peeked out again. The scavengers were coming closer, too close. They had to leave, immediately. He held Vila's hand. Stay behind me. Quiet. She nodded. And then they ran into the darkness, into the unknown desert, chased by shadows. Not everyone wants her safe. The cold night air cut through the desert as Jack and Vila moved quickly through the sand. Jack held a small lamp low to the ground, just enough light to see. Vila stayed close behind him, holding her baby tight. Tavi didn't cry, maybe too weak to make a sound. Or maybe he felt the fear in his mother's heartbeat. Jack had been chased before. But this felt different. He wasn't running for himself. He was running for them. For a mother who had nothing, and for a baby who barely clung to life. A sharp whisper cut through the darkness behind them. They went this way, Jack cursed under his breath. The scavengers were close. He looked up at a ridge ahead. Rocks, maybe a hiding place. This way, he said, voice low but firm. They climbed. The sand slipped under their feet, but Jack helped pull Vila up. She didn't complain. She moved like someone who had learned to suffer in silence. At the top, Jack found a small cave hidden behind stone. He motioned for her to go inside. They ducked in, breath heavy. Jack turned off the light. Darkness, only the sound of his heart thudding in his chest, and the soft breathing of mother and child beside him. Minutes passed, then voices again, closer, louder. The scavengers were right below. They have the alien widow. She's worth credits. A lot of credits. Jack clenched his jaw. So that was it. Vila wasn't just some poor refugee to them, she was a product. A body to be sold. Maybe her baby too. He felt sick. He looked at her in the dark. She sat holding Tavi, her back straight, her eyes closed. She looked like she was praying. But to what? Jack whispered, "Do you know them?" She opened her eyes. "Bad men. From camp. They tried to take Tavi." Jack's blood ran cold. "They hurt you?" Vila didn't answer, but that was enough. The footsteps below faded. But Jack didn't move yet. He waited. Long minutes. Just to be sure. Finally, when the desert was quiet again, he helped her to her feet. "We can't stay out here," he said. "They'll come back." "Where go?" she asked. Jack thought hard. He remembered an old wreck he passed weeks ago, a downed ship buried in sand. It wasn't far. Maybe still. Had power. Maybe a place to hide. "I know a place, but we have to move fast." They started walking again, taking a narrow path between rocks. Suddenly, a sharp noise behind them. A shout. A light. One of the scavengers had climbed the ridge and spotted them. "There they are!" Jack pulled his blaster, fired a warning shot. The two. Bolt hit the sand near the man's foot. The scavenger ducked, but now the others would come. Jack grabbed Vila's hand. "Run!" They ran across the ridge, down the other side. A shot fired behind them. It missed, but barely. The child let out a soft cry. First sound in hours. Jack looked back. The men were chasing, but slower on the rocks. Up ahead he saw the ship, half buried. Rusted, but maybe still strong enough to be a shield. This way. They reached the wreck. Jack pushed open a small side hatch. Sand poured out. Inside. Vila climbed in first, crawling with Tavi in her arms. Jack jumped in after her and slammed the hatch shut. He looked around. Darkness again, but safe. For now. He sat down, breathing hard. Vila touched his arm. "Why?" "Help us," she asked softly. Jack didn't answer at first. Then he looked at her. "I saw a mother who would rather starve than feed herself before her baby. And I saw people who didn't care. That's not the kind of world I want." Vila said nothing, but her eyes were wet again. Outside, faint footsteps came and went, but the ship held strong. For tonight, they had a chance. Hunted through the dust inside. The broken ship. Silence returned. But outside, the danger still moved. Jack leaned against the cold wall, listening. He counted the seconds between every gust of wind. He could hear the scavengers' voices in the far distance, cursing, searching, shouting orders. But they hadn't found the hatch. Not yet. Vila sat on the floor holding her baby close. Tavi had fallen asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling gently. Vila looked tired, but not afraid anymore. Not with Jack beside her. Jack spoke in a quiet voice. "We'll stay here till morning, then move. They won't search forever." Vila nodded. She was learning to trust him, bit by bit. Jack pulled out a power cell from his bag and connected it to a small heating unit. Warmth filled the tiny chamber. It was the first time in hours that the cold didn't bite at their bones. But peace never lasted long out here. A distant noise made Jack sit up straight, a humming sound. Low, mechanical, then a sharp beep. Vila looked at him with alarm. "Drone," she whispered. Jack grabbed his scanner. The screen blinked, red light. The scavengers had launched a tracker drone. "They're not giving up," he muttered. He looked around the wreck for options, a back hatch, rusted, but maybe workable, and a narrow tunnel running under the ship's floor, probably part of the cargo hold. "Just big enough to crawl through," he pointed. "We use the tunnel. They won't expect us to go under." Vila hesitated. She looked at her child. "It's tight," Jack admitted, "but safe." Vila nodded and started moving. She went first, carrying Tavi close to her chest. Jack followed, pulling the hatch shut behind him. The tunnel was dark and narrow. They crawled on hands and knees, the metal cold and sharp beneath them. Jack's back scraped the roof. At the far end, he pushed. Open a loose vent cover. A soft light came in. Outside, the endless desert. No voices, no movement, just dunes stretching to the horizon. They climbed out quietly, but Jack's scanner still blinked red. The drone was above them, hidden in the clouds. "We need cover," Jack said, eyes scanning the landscape. "Now." He saw an old cargo hauler wrecked half a mile away, its top broken but sides still strong. It could block the drone's view. They started running. Sand kicked up with each step. Jack carried the baby now, letting Vila move faster. Her legs were thin, her feet bleeding, but she didn't stop. Behind them, a loud screech split the sky. The drone had spotted them. Jack turned mid-run and fired upward. The bolt struck the drone's side. It sparked, swerved, but didn't fall. It circled once, then disappeared into the clouds. "They'll know where we are now," Jack said. "We've got maybe 10 minutes. They reached the hauler wreck and slid inside. Jack quickly covered the opening with scrap metal. They caught their breath. "Why they want me?" Vila asked suddenly. Jack looked at her. She was scared, not just for herself, but for her baby. "You said they tried to take your child before," he said. "They probably want both of you." She shook her head. "Not just want. Need." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Vila looked down at her baby. "My kind, very few left after war, my baby. Rare, pure bloodline." Jack understood now. They didn't just want to sell her, they wanted to breed from her. He felt his stomach turn. "They won't get you," he said firmly. But even as he spoke, the sound of engines roared across the sand. Vehicles, fast ones, coming, right at them. Jack grabbed his weapon. "Stay down." He peeked outside. 2 scavenger bikes, 1 small truck, headed straight for the wreck. Jack looked around, nowhere else to run. He had to buy them time. He looked at Vila. "You take Tavi and crawl back under the hauler. There's a service pipe there. Leads down to an old fuel drain. They won't find you there." She grabbed his arm. "You come? I'll lead them away first, then find you." Her eyes filled with tears again. But this time she didn't beg. She just nodded. Jack kissed the baby's forehead once, then climbed out of the wreck, gun in hand, heart racing. Shelter in the wreck. Jack ran straight into the open desert, gun in hand, boots pounding across the sand. Behind him, the scavenger bikes roared louder, speeding after him like desert wolves. He didn't look back. He just ran. One shot rang out, barely missing his foot. Sand exploded beside him. But Jack smiled. Good. They were chasing him, not Vila, not the baby. He was buying time. He zigzagged across the dunes, heading toward an old scrapyard, half buried in sand, filled with rusted parts and shattered ships. It was a graveyard for machines, and maybe a place to hide. He slid down a slope and ducked behind a broken engine core. His chest heaved. Sweat poured from his face. He waited. The bikes passed above him, fast and blind. He gave them 10 seconds, then bolted sideways, crawling, under a broken hover truck. He moved fast, using every shadow and scrap to stay hidden. The scavengers didn't notice. They kept going. Jack grinned. That's right. Keep running. When the sound of engines faded, he finally stood. His body ached. His legs were burning. But he turned around and began the long walk back to Vila. She was waiting, still hidden under the fuel pipe, her arms wrapped tightly around Tavi. The baby slept, unaware of the danger. When she saw Jack's shadow at the edge of the wreck, she crawled out quickly. "You live," she whispered. He smiled and nodded. "Told you I'd come back." She grabbed his hand and pressed it against her forehead, a gesture from her people, one of deep thanks. Jack helped her back up. "We need a real place to hide, somewhere they won't look." "I know place," Vila said softly. "You do?" She nodded. "Old human shelter. Many don't know. Hidden. My husband took me once. Long time ago. Can you find it?" She looked at the sky, then pointed north. "Yes." Jack trusted her. They started walking again. Hours passed. The sun began to rise. They crossed rocks, climbed hills and passed old ruins. Jack carried Tavi most of the way. The child stirred a few times but never cried. Finally, Vila pointed ahead. Between two giant cliffs was a narrow path. At the end, a small cave. Hard to see, covered in thick vines and sand. Jack pulled the vines away and stepped inside. It was dark, cold, but not empty. There was old furniture, broken tools, faded human posters on the wall, and in the corner, an emergency power cell. Jack checked it, still working. He switched it on, and soft light filled the cave. Vila looked around and sighed in relief. This, she said quietly, was a safe place. Jack set the baby down gently, then collapsed against the wall. For the first time in days, they had real shelter. No wind, no hunters, no fear, for now. He cooked a small meal over a heat plate, shared it with Vila. She ate slowly, giving the first bites to Tavi again. Jack watched her. She was stronger than he'd thought. Even with all the pain and hunger, she never gave up. He finally asked, "Why did they leave you?" Vila was quiet, then said, "My baby. Too weak. Not strong like others. They said we bring shame. So, we were cast out." Jack looked at her. "They were wrong." She smiled faintly. "You are only one who said that." He reached into his bag and took out an old cloth, wrapped it around the baby like a warm blanket. Vila touched his hand again. "You are a good man." Jack chuckled. "Just a tired one." She stared at him for a moment, then whispered, "You saved my son. You saved me." Her voice cracked, and this time she didn't cry. She just leaned her head gently on Jack's shoulder. Jack didn't move. He let her rest. Because sometimes being strong means just being there. And tonight, inside the old human shelter, they weren't just running anymore. They were healing. Together. When kindness becomes a crime. The cave shelter stayed quiet for 2 days. Jack fixed the door. Vila made soft beds from old fabric. The baby, Tavi, even laughed once. A small, sweet sound that echoed in the stone walls like music. But peace never lasts long when the galaxy sees kindness as weakness. On the 3rd morning, Jack stepped outside to check the solar panel charging near the entrance. A voice shouted from the cliffs, "Hands up, human." Jack spun around. 3 armed patrolmen in human armor stood above him, rifles raised. Their gear marked them as part of the local trade colony's enforcement group. Jack slowly raised his hands. "Easy. I live alone. No trouble." One soldier stepped forward. "We tracked a banned alien life form. You've been off the grid. What are you hiding?" Jack's heart sank. They had traced Vila, maybe from the drone, maybe from his old signal. He said nothing. The soldiers marched him inside. And that's when they saw her. Vila froze when they entered. She clutched Tavi tightly. The soldier pointed. "There! That's her! Illegal species! And she's holding a pureblood child." Jack stepped between them. "She's done nothing wrong." "She's a Class C refugee," the leader growled. No entry stamp, no ID chip. She's not allowed on human land, especially not with offspring. She was starving, Jack shouted. Her people abandoned her. I gave her food, that's all. The soldier narrowed his eyes. Then you're guilty of aiding an undocumented life form. You know the penalty. Vila shook her head. Please. Baby's sick. No harm. But the soldiers didn't listen. They grabbed Jack's arms and pushed him against the wall. Tavi started crying. Vila begged, voice breaking. No, take him, please, he's just a baby. But the soldier stepped toward her, reaching for the child. That was Jack's breaking point. He snapped his elbow back, striking, the guard holding him. Then he kicked the second one in the leg and grabbed the nearest weapon. Don't touch them, Jack roared. The gun charged in his hands. Back off. The soldiers froze. The leader glared. You just turned this into a felony, Jack. Jack didn't care. She's a mother, he growled. Not a criminal. She's illegal. And you're harboring her. That makes you a traitor. Jack's finger stayed near the trigger. But inside, he was thinking fast. He couldn't shoot them. Not and survive. But maybe. There was another way. He slowly lowered the weapon and raised both hands. Fine. Take me in. But leave them here. I'll take the blame. Vila's voice cracked. No. Jack looked at her and smiled sadly. You have to keep him safe. I'll be okay. She gripped his hand tightly, her eyes full of panic. But the soldiers were already moving. They forced Jack outside. He didn't fight. He let them chain his hands. But he looked back only once, and saw Vila holding Tavi, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. The holding cell was cold and gray. Just 4 metal walls and one thin light. Jack sat on the bench silent. A guard walked in after some time. You're lucky, he said. Command wants to talk to you. They're curious why someone like you would risk everything for an alien. Jack didn't answer. Transport leaves in 1 hour. You'll face trial. Jack stared at the wall, but deep down, he was already planning, not escape. Something bigger. Because if kindness was now a crime, he would make the whole world see it. A family forged in fire. The courtroom was tall, cold, and full of noise. Humans, aliens, officials, guards, all watching one man. Jack. He stood alone in the center, hands chained in front of him. His clothes were dirty. His face was tired. But his eyes, still steady, still strong. The judge, an old human with silver stripes on his robe, cleared his throat. You are charged with violating interspecies law, harboring an unregistered alien and her offspring. Do you deny this? Jack raised his chin. No. I fed a starving mother. I protected her child. I won't say sorry for that. Whispers spread across the room. A few heads nodded, but others frowned. The judge asked, Do you realize this act placed you and human civilians at risk? Jack took a breath. Then he said, clearly, You say helping a hungry family is a danger. I say letting them die is a bigger crime. A sharp voice rose from the side chamber. It was the colony's enforcement commander. This alien is part of a rejected bloodline. Her baby could carry dangerous traits, and we don't know if she's part of a rebel group. Jack slammed his chained fists against the podium. She's a widow. Her people cast her out. She never attacked anyone. She cried when I gave her food. Her baby barely made a sound from weakness. And you still say she's a threat? The room went quiet. Then a soft cry echoed through the chamber doors. Everyone turned. The judge raised an eyebrow. What is that sound? The doors opened, and Vila stepped inside. Tavi lay in her arms, wrapped in the blanket Jack had given him. Gasps filled the room. Guards moved to stop her, but the judge lifted a hand. Let her speak. Vila walked forward, slow but proud. She stopped beside Jack and looked up at the judge. I'm not warrior, she said in broken English. I am mother. She held up her child. This is Tavi, My son. No harm. Only hunger. Human man. He feed us. Save us. She looked at Jack, then back at the crowd. Your laws say, he wrong, but my heart say, he saved 2 lives. Silence. Then someone stood in the back row, a young woman in a trade uniform. I was born during the refugee storm, she said. My mother was alien. A human helped us. I wouldn't be alive without him. Another voice, an older alien man. I fought in the wars. I saw hate. This isn't hate. This is humanity. The judge looked around the room, then down at Jack. He tapped his screen once. The chains on Jack's hands unlocked. He spoke softly. This court recognizes that laws are meant to protect life, not punish compassion. The charges are dropped. The room burst into quiet applause. Jack turned to Vila. She looked up at him, eyes wet, but smiling. The baby reached out a tiny hand toward him, and Jack took it. Later, outside the court, the sun shined over the city, towers. Jack stood with Vila and Tavi watching the people pass. Some smiled at them, some just stared, but none looked away. Jack asked quietly, "What will you do now?" Vila touched her son's forehead. "Find safe place. Grow him strong." Jack nodded. Then she looked at him. Her voice was soft. "Come with us?" Jack blinked. "What? You, not just save us. You are us. Family." He looked at her. At the baby. At the strange path that brought them here. He smiled. "All right," he said. "Let's go home." And they walked off together. Mother, child, and the man who turned a moment of kindness into a bond no law could break.